some final thoughts on the Modulus Super Deluxe 12 build. I suppose my biggest complaint is the pick list and layout anomalies. The 100 are resistors forming the pseudo center tap, which if I hadn't had a email conversation with Modulus, I would have actually installed in the build as it was part of the layout, and there was no reason not to, because there were no instructions saying that they shouldn't be used, presumably unless you were building a 6L6 version for the 20 watt and you would have had a higher output mains transformer or a more robust mains transformer. And in a previous video I said the consequence of putting those in would have been to run the two output valves at 150%, trying to dissipate 20 watts when the maximum is 14 for a 6v6 GT. Other things like the cathode resistor on the layout, it's 1 wattage, I think it says 5 watt on there, and the pick list is 7 watt, a 10 watt got sent. There were 5 additional resistors which weren't on the layout and weren't at all needed in the build, but they still got picked and sent. The mains fuse supplied was a 2 amp as per pick list. On the back panel it clearly states 1 amp. Again, Modulus confirmed that it should have been 1 amp, so they sent some 1 amps, but initially 2 amps were sent with the kit. The build itself was fairly straightforward. There were no real issues. The layout is clean, simple, easy to follow, and I didn't have any problems there. Just my clumsiness in ruining one of the Mallory 150 capacitors, but that's now been replaced. Personal dislikes, I wasn't too impressed with the valve sockets, and I would like to see that as a upgrade option on the pick list perhaps. The indicator lamp, I'm not very fond of that style internally, the sort of fender style, although it's considered to be a good part. There's also mentioned the plan of an optional bright cap. I don't think it's optional, certainly not in my case, using humbucking guitar pickups or vintage P90s. It's a necessity to have that actually in place. I did initially try it without it, but soon went back to the bench and installed the optional bright cap. Things that I should have ordered in retrospect, I should have gone with a black or brown fascia and back panel as opposed to the chrome type finish. Although I think it looks quite nice, it is a fingerprint magnet and it does seem to scratch quite easily, and I think that the black or brown option would have perhaps matched a build much more nicely, and that's something I would have perhaps ordered in retrospect. But apart from that, I'm pleased with the build. It seems to be working quite nicely. The tone stack is a bit, from the bass end it's a bit mild, if you say, whereas at the treble end it's very aggressive. The first volume stage, as I said, is quite aggressive. In fact, it tends to go into distortion once you get beyond about 3, irrespective of where the master is set. So that's that's something I'll be looking at changing, as I say, perhaps with a lower mu valve, with less output, if you like. If we take the 12AX7 ECC83 as being 100% output, you'd have something like a 5751 which will output around 70%, an AT7 ECC81 at 60%, and so on. So it might be viable to try one of those to tame that down. I'll also be, as I say, changing the cathode resistor to cool down the output of these. The mains voltage I get in the house here used to vary quite highly, from 235 up to nearly 250 volts. However, I don't know whether it's the Christmas period or the fact that they've been building a huge housing estate just along the road, that the voltages have been lower recently. But certainly when they were hitting nearly 250 volts mains input, I wouldn't want to run my valves that hot, because that extra bit of voltage would perhaps push them a bit too high. So I'll be looking at reducing the cathode increasing the value of the cathode resistor in there to about 330, to bring these down to under the 12 watts dissipation. And again, running them cooler will perhaps give me a slightly cleaner sound that I personally prefer. So that's it. The next thing I'm going to talk about is what I'm going to do for a cabinet for that. So I'll just get some of the bits and pieces together I put aside for that, and we'll start again with that. Okay, some of the hardware I'll be using on the build. I've already had a nameplate to go on the front made. I get these from a company I've been dealing with for years, called Sinomatic. That sounds like something from a Wallace and Gromit movie, but that is actually their name. They're based in Sweden and they are really excellent. Use your dog bone handle, chrome corners for the protection of things, mounting screws. The back panels I tend to fit on with thumb screws so they can be easily removed without having to resort to a screwdriver, and sometimes I fit pull handles on the back to allow you to just easily move them out. The main carcass itself will be made from a 10mm ply, which was donated by a friend from a skip find. I've got quite a bit of this, so that'll be forming the main carcass during the build. As it's quite thin, the edges I'll be, the joints I'll be mitering and then gluing together with some reinforcing battens. The reinforcing battens also came free. That was from a local white goods shop, where they have a bin outside when they deliver things like washing machines, tumble dryers and so on. These are some of the packing battens that go in there, and they just put them in a bin to one side and say, help yourself. One thing I have started doing when I build amp cases is I've started putting in a runner so the amp can slide in and out without catching on the fabrics and so on. Not sure whether I'm going to use this T-shape piece or sort out some L-shape quadrant to go in for the amp to sit on. The grill material I use is this. It's a stainless steel. I have some that I've had for quite a while, which I've been using. Again, it's something I bought ages ago, and it was much cheaper to purchase than the expanded alloy that you usually see. However, it is extremely tough, and it has to be cut with an angle grinder, and the edges are incredibly sharp, hence the rubber finish on the edge there, which I use. The front panel itself will be black Tolex type or a vinyl type finish. The main carcass, I'm actually going to go for red canvas, and then I'll be lacquering that afterwards. So the red and black is going to be the main finish. The back panels I do like this, which is just a textured black paint. It's a blackball paint, very, very tough, but it's applied with a sponge by hand, stippled on, and that allows me to get this textured finish overall, I say, which is quite robust. I did think about replacing the knobs as I'm going for the red and black finish with either black chicken heads, but I do have somewhere, if I can find them, some nice old-fashioned red Bakelite knobs, which may be quite nice in there. I'll have to seek those out, but those certainly are very nice and very high quality. But that's detailing the build. Now the only issue I do have is that where I do my woodworking is out of doors. I don't have anywhere in workshop area to do woodworking, so I have to do it in the back garden, and as it's currently just above freezing, that'll be a bit of a challenge at the moment. Obviously there's no point in painting or gluing out there, so that'll be done in here on this with some sheets down to protect everything. And that's the final video for now, until I show the making of the cabinet.